Welcome to part 2 of our starting a company video. In this video, we're going over the journey of a company from the founders getting together to fundraising, to issuing stock, to vesting agreements, and all the way to the company exit, and kind of explaining how the process works for each one of those steps. If you haven't watched part 1, go and watch that, because otherwise this won't make any sense. Okay, so let's get started. Seed round. So after incorporating and dedicating time to the business, the company is doing great. The two founders managed to build the product, launch it, and are generating revenue. Let's assume that our fictitious company is a SaaS business, that's software as a service. It has $30,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Those are customer subscriptions that they renew automatically every month. So the business is also consistently growing at 10% per month. That translates to around 300% in annual growth. Those are good seed round metrics. Kind of like basic, standard, minimum seed round metrics. So these guys want to keep growing fast and accelerate their pace even more. So they agree to seek out a new round of funding. This time, their goal is raising $500,000. So for this stage, they can start reaching out to angel investors outside their family circle. They use Slidebean to create a freaking awesome pitch deck and start generating meetings. That's the shameless plug. Anyway, we have a video on the process of finding investors, so go check that out if you have any questions. So the team finds an angel investor, and this guy is willing to come into this round. So what percentage of the company do these new investors get? If we used traditional methods to calculate the business valuation, for example, a 5x multiplier of their annualized revenue, that's actually a standard metric, then we could say that the business is worth about $2 million. That's $30,000 in monthly revenue times 12 times 5. In that case, these new investors would get a 25% chunk of the company, which is not that fair for founders. It will dilute them too much too early in the process. Also, knowing the potential of the product and how fast they're growing, the founders feel the company is already worth maybe $5 million. If that were the case, then the new investors would be buying around 10% of the new business with their $500,000 investment. However, the investor believes that that's too small of a percentage for the risk they're taking. So what valuation to use at this stage? The 2 million or the 5 million? Somewhere in the middle? Well, the answer is neither. This is where a convertible note comes into play. Convertible notes. We also have a full video on convertible notes if you want to dive deeper into how they work, but I'm going to explain it in simple terms here. Considering the founders and the investors have no way on agreeing on a valuation right now, they can use a convertible note to hold off on the decision of how much the business is worth. With a convertible note, investors can come in, the company can grow, and the conversion to stock occurs later. A convertible note works much like a loan, except that it's designed to be paid back in stock instead of cash. How many shares of stock? Well, that will be determined based on the company valuation in the future. Convertible notes are also known as bridge funding because they provide quick capital with the expectation of a future round. So, a convertible note for this company could look something like this. A $500,000 investment will be made in the form of a note or a loan. The company then assumes that with this capital, it will be able to scale fast, getting to the point where they can raise a Series A round. More importantly, the money will allow them to solidify their market presence. It will make it easier for future investors to define a number that's fair for the company valuation. So the capital invested in this convertible note will convert into stock at a future valuation. That valuation will be defined by the investors of the Series A round. And then the seed stage investor will get the same terms as the new future investors. So to compensate this early investor for taking an extra risk, they will get a discount on the valuation of the future investors. That discount is usually around 20%. Again, check out our video on convertible notes if you want to understand these variables with more detail and a few others that I skipped just for the purpose of simplicity. So, for this company story, notes are issued, money is in the bank, and the company continues to grow. The cap table or share distribution of this company is still unchanged. The new investor is not a shareholder yet. The stock option pool. At this point, the company will want to recruit some talent. These are going to be the first employees, and it's important to keep these guys motivated. In the startup world, it's quite common to offer shares of stock to the first employees in the company, and this is done with a stock option pool. Now, the stock option pool consists of a defined amount of shares that are sort of set aside to be issued to employees. For an option pool, our sample company could issue, say, 500,000 new shares of stock, bringing the total number of shares to 10,500,000. Once again, those 4 million shares that each one of the original founders started the business with no longer represent 40% of the business. They still have the 4 million shares, but they now represent around 38%. Our original investor also gets diluted. Their 2 million shares no longer represent 20% of the company. They're now somewhere around 19%. So the shares on the stock option pool are not given to employees, mostly because of tax purposes. If the company just gave, say, 100,000 shares to a new key employee, they would effectively be receiving an asset that has a value. Remember how the company valuation was $250,000 after the first round of investment? Well, that means that each share is worth around $0.023. So 100,000 shares would represent over $2,000, which would be considered taxable income. At a small valuation, this is not a lot of money, but as the company scales, this could bring serious tax implications. So instead of giving the shares to the employees, the stock option pool is made up of stock options. The company is offering the employee the option to purchase shares at a defined and fixed rate. So for this theoretical company, the price could be $0.023 per share, because that's the last official valuation the company had. This is called the strike price. If the company increases in value and the price per share increases, the company still has the option to purchase those shares at the original strike price that was promised in the option pool, which lets them turn out a profit. So for the purpose of this scenario, we're going to assume that 2 key employees were hired and each one of them got 250,000 stock options. As our theoretical company grows, we'll look into some scenarios on what happens with these stock options.